Hey, Mattie, what are we going to talk about today?
We're going to talk about college essays, Michelle. I brought some examples, and we're going to go into what an omniscient narrator is. Have you ever heard that term before?
I haven't, but I'm pretty sure you're going to tell us about it.
Oh, I bet you I am. We're going to go into basically my history, talking about like actually working in college applications and doing these essay work, and the problems that I have seen in a number of different college essays that go back to like my very first days doing so. Will reflect a lot about my history as a professional writer, as a memoirist and nonfiction writer, and kind of use that information to inform why modern college essays don't actually make a whole lot of sense, like given that style of writing. It should be a hoot. Looking forward to it.
I'm excited.
All right, let's welcome everybody. I'm going to start by reading three paragraphs for you, okay, Michelle? And viewer at home. I'm going to read three paragraphs and then we're going to talk about them. And it will go on to link into what I feel about college essays in general, okay? So here's the first one. The morning had dawned, clear and cold, with a crispness that hinted at the end of summer. They set forth at daybreak to see a man beheaded, 20 in all, and Bran rode among them, nervous with excitement. This was the first time he had been deemed old enough to go with his lord father and his brothers to see the king's justice done. It was the 9th year of summer and the 7th of Bran's life. Second, Albus Dumbledore didn't seem to realize that he had just arrived in a street where everything from his name to his boots was unwelcome. He was busy rummaging in his cloak, looking for something. But he did seem to realize he was being watched because he looked up suddenly at the cat, which was still staring at him from the other end of the street. For some reason, the sight of the cat seemed to amuse him. He chuckled and muttered, "I should have known." And then here's the third one. Those elements were a commonality in my wardrobe as I packed for a 2-week sleepaway camp the summer after 6th grade. The possibility of redefining myself in a new environment filled me with excitement as I dreamed of being the unique yet popular girl instead of just the nerd. However, upon arrival, that dream was shattered as my fellow campers regarded me with an air of condescension that I didn't understand. Perplexed, I asked one such camper what was wrong with me, and she said, "The way you dress and that you ask too many questions." That summer camp marked the birth of an internal battle between my lifelong desire to stand out and my newfound desire to be accepted in society. Okay, Michelle, what do you think about these three paragraphs? Do you guess where they're from?
Well, knowing you and knowing what we're talking about, it sounds like they're probably from college essays. And I would just say, from my initial, just like what captivates me from them, the third one is the one that I'm most interested in hearing more about.
Okay, well, you're probably correct. The first is from Game of Thrones, and the second is from Harry Potter. I think it would be pretty wacky if Albus Dumbledore, if someone wrote that. Yes, the third one is a college essay, and in particular, I kind of just Googled like essays that worked or what have you, and I looked for one that was well written. That was the key, and I do believe objective. Well, all three of these paragraphs are well written. I will say that there's craft behind them. However, we're going to talk about primarily the third one today because I kind of hate it, and why I kind of hate it is kind of the what today's topic is really about, or as I call it, college essays. So basically, omniscient narrators. That's what I want to talk about. All right, an omniscient narrator is I guess it's a thematic. It's like it's something from books, fiction, really. Well, we'll get to that. Essentially, in both the first two paragraphs, there's an omniscient narrator present. And when omniscient narrator is, it's basically like God or like a God. Essentially, it is the person telling the story in a story. However, it's not actually the author usually. It can be, but it's pretty rare. An omniscient narrator essentially is like God, and what's really important is that that God has different rules or different powers based upon what the story is. So, for example, here in Game of Thrones, the omniscient or the God, who's never actually named, basically knows whatever the main character of that chapter is thinking, and what they're doing, and it's like their perspective entirely. They can also describe what that character is able to like hear, see, smell, like what his experiences are, but not what those people are thinking. It's like it's them. In Harry Potter, it tends to be just Harry. What he is thinking. However, occasionally it will kind of branch out. Like in this one's Albus Dumbledore when it's convenient, like in the first chapter, and that's why the first chapter of Harry Potter is always kind of awkward because it's when she tended to like talk about like what other people are thinking, and that's why when you read the first chapters of Harry Potter books, you're like, wait, what's going on here? Because she has actually broken the rule of omniscient narration. basically it's usually very important for authors to set those rules like inherently and then follow through with them, or else it gets kind of weird. But usually it's what Harry is thinking, what he is feeling, and occasionally like Voldemort's like in his brain, like what Voldemort is thinking. But this one's I was Dumbledore because it's the intro of the book itself, and it's a little bit weird. But then we get to this third paragraph, and I guess I can read it again because it's important. Those elements were a commonality in my wardrobe as I packed for a 2 week sleepaway camp the summer after sixth grade. The possibility of redefining myself in a new environment filled me with excitement as I dreamed of being the unique yet popular girl instead of just the nerd. However, upon arrival, that dream was shattered as my fellow campers regarded me with an air of condescension that I didn't understand. Perplexed, I asked one such camper what was wrong with me, and she said, "The way you dress and that you ask too many questions." That summer camp marked the birth of an internal battle between my lifelong desire to stand out and my newfound desire to be accepted in society. Okay, so there's a couple lines here that jump out to me as it relates to it. So it's however, upon arrival, that dream was shattered as my fellow campers regarded me with an air of, am I saying condescension right? Or is it condescension?
I think it's condescension.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, like welcome everyone. It's my podcast. I don't know how to actually say words. It's condescension that I didn't understand. As well as perplexed, I asked one such camper what was wrong with me, and she said, "The way you dress and that you ask too many questions." So this is the part of this paragraph that kind of I'm going to dig in on and why it's actually bad, because we'll get to that. But to get there, we now go back to actually me beginning my career in this industry. This is my sixth year doing it. Michelle, this is your third year, I suppose, as associate college consultant.
Yep. Third year.
My background, however, is that I'm a professional writer. Specifically, I'm a professional nonfiction memoir writer. The joke I always make is that memoir is like autobiography, except you, the writer, are not interesting or relevant enough in order to sell a book yourself. So, like, that's why the actual storytelling ability and the literary quality has to be a lot, a lot stronger in general. Um, but that leads me into college consulting, both because I was interested in, also because it made sense to me. Like I liked applying to college. That was my experience. I thought it was fun. Because the essay questions they were asking were the exact type of things I was already writing already for like my friends or for my school newspaper or what have you, and it totally made sense to me. But then I enter this world like not really knowing what the hell I was doing, and I found myself like you maybe are yourself like on the internet, looking for feedback on how to write these essays or how to help students with them, and also like reading essays that worked. Like I would Google them, like, okay, what do these people want? Because as a writer, I'd often just figure out what was already written there and then write something like it. But then I started going insane doing that because I started reading like what was considered like high level college essay writing, and there were two, like some of it was just bad, like a lot of it was just very poorly written. But then there were essays or paragraphs like this one that were objectively well written, like they were polished, there was craft behind them. However, it wasn't that they were bad; it was that they didn't read like anything I have ever read before in nonfiction. So nothing I've ever written. Like just like I am a fan of writing of like memoir, I can read them, and like that's not how memoir is written. Like that's not how these are supposed to sound. Was always my idea, and it drove me insane because I was like, what am I missing? It didn't make any sense to me. And I knew even more frustrating, perhaps, was I knew I could not replicate this. That was probably hard on me. It was like there was a period I was like, I don't know how to write like this or help a student write like this at all. Maybe I don't never get into Harvard now. I'm screwed. But I kind of just ignored it and did my style of writing, and then my students did get into those schools, and I went, "Oh, okay, cool. Like, I guess it doesn't matter." But I was still stuck with like a real bad like frustration about these essays. Like, why are they like they are? And I actually ended up basically giving it a name. I referred to it as college essays was my name for it, and that is kind of what I describe modern essay writing as. Like it's a very specific style of writing that only really exists specifically for students applying to college. And it is completely unlike anything I do with my students or think is credible in any way. But why is it bad? Um, okay, I guess I'll spoil the big thing now. As we'll get into now. We'll talk. Now we'll bear like why it's so bad. Like why they're terrible. I would go on to understand that this is what I refer to as like the five senses system of college essay writing, and you at home may have like actually like read that. So what did you see, hear, smell, like fart? I don't know. Like what was the senses that you experienced? And I guess really reading into that, I began to get my hints about like what was going wrong here because like spoiler, there's like the five senses don't matter like in college essays in my opinion. However, like this is all just me like getting frustrated in hindsight. It's like it doesn't matter what you see, smelled, here. Like that's not what the style of writing is. And I guess it all kind of happened at once. I was reading another essay where a girl was on TikTok, and the girl was like, "I jumped, splash! I jump into the water. I hear my coach screaming my name faster, faster." Like you may know what I'm talking about. That's a bad version of these, and I started laughing because my takeaway was, like, no, you didn't, girl. Like you didn't hear your coach. You were underwater. Like you can't hear that. And that's I guess what kind of brings me into like as we'll talk about this paragraph here now. Like, however, upon arrival, that dream was shattered as my fellow campers regarded me with an air of condensation. I keep condensation is when water turns into droplets. So we'll say that as condensation that I didn't understand. Um, my problem with this is how do you know that, girl? Like student writing this is how are you able to definitively state that your fellow campers had an air of condensation that you didn't. I guess the I didn't understand is might make enough sense, but you can't prove that like that was true. And it's pretty of a weird like ticky tack like criticism, but when you think about it, it makes sense. Like you don't know that. It should read more like I don't know. That's not. You're basically trying to say a fact that you don't know. Similarly, I asked one such camper what was wrong with me, and she said, "The way you dress and that you ask too many questions." Like that quote seems fake to me. It reads like bad like CW drama fiction. But also, do you remember like to use quotations in writing? Do you know exactly that's exactly what you would have had to say like for it to be factual like it was a quote. And I guess this leads to my overall takeaway, like what is wrong with college SAEs, is that it is basically a form of writing in which you yourself are reflecting on your own memories or your own experiences. However, you are implying that you are becoming an omniscient narrator of your own story. That you are acting as if you were God who is actually there and can use direct quotes and can talk about what other people are thinking and feeling and can give can attempt to factually state things that simply are not possible in the realm of real nonfiction memoir because you get it? Like that's the big secret. That's why they're terrible. And I encourage you at home when you're reading these college essays, if nothing else, to basically read them through that lens. Where if like there's actual quotes, you'll see it all the time. It'll be like pencils down, students, or like yeah, like the clock strikes 12:37. Be like, you'll go, really? Like, how do you know that? Does that really happen? Is that like you were there? Like you were in seventh grade. You don't remember that, and you'll catch yourself thinking about that way, and it's gonna make all these essays kind of fall apart in front of you because that is the realization that is what led to me. And what you end up with is an essay, I guess, that comes off as inauthentic and a bit hollow. And that is what I tend to find when I read like even well-written college essays. It is not that like they're inauthentic and hollow is my problem with them. Um, okay. Uh, okay, but here's a little bonus section. Is like, why are things like this? Michelle, would you like to hear about a book series I want to write here on my first podcast?
Oh, wow. Okay.
All right, so it's called the Harvard Diaries, and basically it is a series of books. Each one is a different grade in a high school, and they all have the same English teacher, Mr. C. He's a very cool guy. And basically, they assign each student, like for students applying to college, it's high achieving teens who find love and along the way, kind of thing. That they have to write diary entries every night, essentially about their day, about what's happening to them in preparation of writing college essays. And then each book is a different character. It'd probably start with a girl who wants to get into Harvard, like maybe the Stanford Diaries, and you get the idea. And basically, it's from her perspective, but it's her writing about like a series, like a year in her life at this high school and applying to schools, all her friends and everything like that. But every chapter is like a different diary entry, essentially. And I think it'd be a big seller, big hit. However, do you want to know why I would like kind of have to write it that way?
I think, I mean, I can see, yes, what you're going for. It's like we need to have all that information for it to culminate in some kind of essay at the end. So we need to kind of see like their journey and how they're recording their thoughts and feelings.
The answer is I'd be cheating
Okay.
because I don't know
Or
how.
that.
The key is that I don't know how to write fiction correctly. So this is the other side of the coin of me really being a nonfiction memo writer. I don't know how to write fiction, like full stop. I don't know how to do dialogue. I don't know how to do world building. I don't know how to make characters up in my mind. Um, it is pretty shocking just how poor I am at analyzing or writing fiction in any way whatsoever. And that's part of why it took me so long to figure out why I didn't like modern college essays. Because as I mentioned, like Omniscient Narration is a proponent of fiction. That is like why it stuck by me so far. Is like I don't know, I also don't really consume that much fiction. Like even when I'm watching a movie or reading a book, what I'm actually paying attention to is plot structure. Like it is like the how much time they're spending on different scenes and how they're putting them together correctly. Because that itself is a component of nonfiction as well. But basically, fiction and nonfiction are entirely different styles of writing. Like it's like there's not there really isn't that much overlap in whatsoever, which is why my like award-winning young adult series would be cheating insofar as if you've ever read like the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, probably my favorite book is Flowers for Algernon. If I like whenever I've actually tried to write fiction, it's like crappy Reddit horror fiction and it ends up being like lab entries from a scientist or what have you. Those are all versions of like, technically fiction, but they're bastardized to allow a nonfiction writer to use the tools and skill set that he like emails and journals and lab entries are all a way for a nonfiction writer to essentially kind of like try to pretend to write fiction. And it's still bad because I don't know how to do any of the other stuff, but like that's the closest I can get. And well, you definitely won't get this one, but like what's the opposite of that? Like what is a fiction writer's best attempt to write nonfiction?
I don't think that would turn out well.
One man stage play. It is, and that's yeah, it's one man stage play or dramatic reinterpretation. I would say that is also like what college essays reads to me. It is a dramatic reinterpretation of one's life story told through the lens of like a fiction writer, and that's why it's bad because like have you ever seen a one man stage play?
They're not usually ever good.
Oh, they're all are the worst. Like they're the like I still remember being trapped at one when I was in high school. This one guy, I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like it was like this weird like he's like playing it was like Eddie Murphy's like multiple characters and everything. It was like the worst. It was the worst thing I've ever seen. And that's kind of again, I like that is but why is it like that? It's like, well, I am a college admissions consultant. I was a professional writer. Most people who enter this world come from somewhere else. It's just the nature of it. Most people who teach it come from somewhere else. And I would say the majority are probably like English teachers. You'll see a lot of like script writers, like playwrights or movie writers that I don't know, maybe they're waiting for their big break, but now they're college consultants. Um, well, those are all like styles of fiction writing. Like English teachers tend to actually write and consume and most writers write and consume fiction. Like it is a much more common form of writing that people do. I'm kind of a weirdo that I come from a world where I grew up reading internet blogs and like I've always just written nonfiction. It's the only thing that makes sense to me. Well, that's very niche, and specifically because like creative nonfiction like doesn't really exist much in the same way as it used to. Like it's kind of a dying genre in of itself, except for college essays. So what you end up with are a large amount of fiction writers who are entering this world and are suddenly being tasked to help students and teach them to write nonfiction, which, as I mentioned, is a completely different genre of writing that really doesn't have that much overlap. And but they got to do it, so they do what they can, and that's basically them trying to bastardize their understanding of good writing into a nonfiction format is dramatic reinterpretation. And like dramatic reinterpretations are when you're watching like murder shows where there's like it's like there's like a lady with a knife or whatever, like they're tacky, like they are not a high level of writing, just like my young adult fiction is like a bastardized version. It's like not actually like a good way to do it and like it wouldn't work. And similarly, I also don't know how to write fiction still, so it's bad. Fiction writers still don't know how to write nonfiction. Well, what do we do about all this? What do we do about all this, Michelle? Well, that's why we're here, right? Like, I feel like I've talked a big game here and kind of rambled my way through this first episode, basically saying like I hate everything. However, like there is another path, and like that's what I want to get clear here on the very first episode of College with Mattie. Like, we're doing at least a year of these. Like, enjoy everybody. We'll be here. Basically, there is another way to write college essays, is what I have found, and I had to do it because it was the only way that made sense to me. However, for the last 5 6 years, I've really honed it and realized it's much more effective, and I find it a lot easier. Like it makes a lot more sense. The students I and we personally work with, And that is actually very much the goal of this podcast. I used to write a lot about college and stuff, and there will be discussion about it. But I rarely wrote about writing because it's actually hard to write about. I'm more comfortable talking about writing. And a real goal of this show overall will be to kind of showcase my entire methodology and thought process behind what a good college essay reads like through the lens of a professional nonfiction memoirist writer. And my hope is that by finding that, like, at least you will find an alternative, one that you might find a lot more agreeable and easier to handle, like whatever you're looking for. Otherwise, like, thanks for watching. Bye.
Thank you for watching College with Mattie. For more information or a coaching session with Mattie, visit collegewithmattie.com. You can follow College with Mattie on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Tune in next week for more episodes, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.